Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of Added Time. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Monday. Going to be answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's episode. Just a few things before we get going. Firstly, just some clarity over submitting questions for Added Time, because I do get comments every now and then about how people can submit their questions. So just to make it clear, two main ways to do it. Firstly, on the community page on a Sunday, I will post asking for questions from you guys, and a lot of you guys submit your questions through there. That's sort of the main way to do it, through my YouTube channel on the community page on a Sunday, 12 p.m. UK time. So if you're international, sort of look up 12 p.m. UK time in comparison to where you are. So that's when I usually post it, and that usually works out well for international viewers of my channel. Second way to do it is on my Twitter page at Son of Chelsea. Go follow me there on a Sunday, sort of usually a little bit later. I will post a request there. So that's where I get my questions from. So if you want to submit questions for next week's episode, those are the two main ways to do it. Also, excited to announce that along with my video content, I'm going to be posting a lot more of it as just an audio podcast as well. So along with the videos aren't changing, but just if you want to listen to it just as a podcast and you don't want to see my face, and if you want to have it as a podcast, because I know people like to listen to podcasts, whether it's walking, working out, whatever, you can now have that option. So you've got the video format on YouTube, but also as a podcast as well. So Added Time, this episode will be as a podcast as well. Also, Let's Talk Chelsea, interviews with guests on the channel, and a rational perspective as well, all be going up as podcasts now as well. So there's that option too. But let's get into your questions. Firstly, here from Tyrese, who asks, what does Lampard do with Kepa? Play him sporadically to maintain what's left of his market value until we can loan or sell him, or make Willie the number 2 goalkeeper? I think Frank has to be ruthless here. I think he does. Loan, sell, market value, I don't think that's relevant anymore to Kepa. I think that Frank himself, he has to be selfish here as a coach. I think he has to look at Kepa, look at the amount of mistakes he makes on a regular basis now, the howlers he makes. I know we can sort of go over that second goal again, and to be fair, since I've done my review and looking back at the game a little bit more again and seeing that second goal, I think you have to put more blame on Zuma than maybe I did in my review, because I think it was really poor from Zuma. But at the same time, the lack of confidence and trust in Kepa is affecting Chelsea. It's costing Chelsea points, and you know, yeah, sure, Chelsea are going to make a loss on Kepa. There's no doubt about that now. But I think just as a coach, Frank, moving forward, I think he has to put Willie in there, because I think there's more trust in Willie Caballero. Make no mistake, Willie Caballero is not the long-term answer for Chelsea. It's not a good situation Chelsea have in terms of their goalkeeper department. But I feel a lot more reassured in Caballero. And I actually think Chelsea's defence are a lot more reassured with Caballero in goal rather than Kepa. So I think now Willie has to be the number 2 goalkeeper. If Mendy's not fit for Sevilla, for me, Caballero has to be in goal. And yeah, sure, it's going to be a loss for Chelsea, but I think Frank has to be selfish here as a coach, because at the moment, Kepa, every time he plays, there's the chance of him making a clanger, you know, having a howler. He's so low in confidence. I think it's the end really in terms of Kepa. So I think, yeah, Willie should be number 2 goalkeeper for Chelsea. Dean Miz asks, a friend of the channel, I've had him on as a guest before, a great writer for CFC UK and also the author of Cult Fiction, which was all about Maurizio Sarri. Really good book, so I definitely suggest you go and read that book. But he asks, should we stop expecting a tight defence and start embracing this crazy season? I am feeling a little bit better about Chelsea after the weekend in terms of the results. Seeing the results yesterday, you know, Tottenham bottling a 3-goal lead. It doesn't, you know, justify Chelsea's mistakes, but I think, yeah, it's been a crazy start to the season, hasn't it? I mean, apart from Everton and Aston Villa, none of the big teams really have been consistent enough. It's been so erratic. It's been so hard to predict. To make any conclusions so far this season is really difficult. I think that just excusing that, I think it is wrong, just to say, well, we're going to concede a lot of goals because everyone else is conceding a lot of goals. There's potentially an opportunity here for Chelsea to really sort of impose themselves in the Premier League this season. If Frank can sort out his defence with the attack looking more promising game by game, Chelsea have an opportunity to potentially go for the title this year, when maybe at the start of the year we didn't expect that. I think it will level out eventually. I don't think we can rely on just the league being crazy week in, week out. I actually think maybe the addition now, the introduction of Champions League football could actually benefit the top teams, because I think top teams will start playing a lot more games, a bit more cohesion with new signings, and that can benefit Chelsea. But yeah, it looks like it potentially could be one of those seasons. I think Everton and Aston Villa, especially Everton, I'm intrigued to see how they go, but you know, they haven't got any form of European football moving forward, and that could really benefit them this season in what is an intense season, and it could be one of those really freak seasons. But I think Chelsea and Lampard should still be looking to improve. I don't think that's an excuse, to be honest. And Chelsea's defending, whilst poor last season and is still poor, He's sort of the standard level at the moment for Chelsea. It's not terrible Premier League defending based on everyone else defending this season, where no one really seems to be that bothered about keeping a clean sheet. It's all about attack, attack, attack. Abhinav asked, Jorginho, Kovacic better than Jorginho and Kante? This is the big question, isn't it, in terms of what is Frank Lampard's best midfield, sort of midfield pivot, sort of the DMs in the case to sort of the deeper lying midfielders. It's such a tough question. Of course, we know that Georgie and Kova have a really good chemistry. I think they have a great understanding. We saw that multiple times last season, especially in the early period of last season when Kante was injured. I think Frank has to sacrifice some of his attacking intent if he wants to continue playing the likes of Jorginho. I think when I see consistently, and this happened multiple times in the second half, right? You could have a go at Jorginho's sort of ability to defend, to tackle. That's not his strength. And I always get annoyed when I see criticism of Jorginho, just in the sense where Jorginho's being isolated and sort of exposed in a game and people having a go at him for that. I think it's on Lampard if he wants to put Jorginho as sort of a main point, a consistent point of his midfield this season. You have to understand the limitations of Jorginho's game, and seeing both Kante and Jorginho pressing up high, that's always going to lead to problems for Chelsea, and I think Frank has to rectify that. If you're going to play, say, Jorginho, I think you have to understand that there is a different way of playing. You have to sit him a little bit deeper with Kante, with Kova. Kova's brilliant for press resistance. I think he's great for dribbling. He's great for interlinking with fellow attackers, but he's not the best defender. He's always going to be a more progressive midfielder, and that's the problem Chelsea have. They do not have a natural DM, so I think it's onshore that there's a problem with currently the sort of the characteristics of the players we have in that area, but I also think it's on Lampard as a coach to be pragmatic, because there are good footballers within there and I have seen them work at times. I think Frank just has to maybe rein in some of his attacking intent in terms of constantly pressing those midfielders up high, like we see with the fullbacks, making one of them sit in a little bit deeper, and hopefully that could sort out the situation. But it definitely is a big problem. I think I'd still go with Jorginho and Kante because I like having Kante in the team. I think Kante is such a world-class footballer. Yes, he's had difficult struggles recently, but I'd still say Jorginho and Kante is for me the preferred sort of midfield two, because I think you have to have Kante on the pitch in my opinion. Lucas asked, personally, Kante is my favourite player in the squad. Who's your favourite player in the squad? I can understand Kante because he is a world-class footballer. Probably favourite player in the squad for me would be Christian Pulisic at the moment. I loved watching him last season. I think he was absolutely exhilarating. I think once we lost Eden Hazard, you want those players that are going to get you off your seat and do incredible things on the pitch, and I think Pulisic's one of those players. I think he has the motivation, confidence and belief to be an incredible footballer for Chelsea. I think he's going to do wonderful things for Chelsea. I think he can score a bundle of goals, a lot more than Eden Hazard. So I'd probably say Pulisic, and I think sort of the story of Pulisic's quite inspiring too. I think he's such a motivated individual and came through some struggles last year. So I'll say Pulisic. Listen, I think that there's a lot of players in the Chelsea squad I like. There's a lot of likeable figures, but I just edge it towards Pulisic because he can do some incredible things on the pitch. Roy asked, many Chelsea fans are so ungrateful that they literally forgot what Lamps did last season. Why do you think this happens every single time with our managers? It's a complex sort of answer. I think it's a long-winded answer, so I'll try and shorten it down a bit. I said a bit of this on Twitter last night, and of course, after a poor result, I've got questions about this in recent weeks. After a poor result with a club like Chelsea, you're always going to get criticism. You have to understand that. I think it's about sort of the balance between going overboard and asking for the manager to be sacked, and then sort of being critical and objective about the problems currently and frustrations longer term. I think that there is a balance to be struck there, as I try and do on my channel. I think you have to understand. I think it'd be a bit silly of me, and I think it'd be a bit flippant of me to just go, well, it's a certain generation, which to be honest, I'm part of, and just saying, it's ungrateful fans. I think there has to be an understanding that I think it's a 50-50 split here. I think a lot of Chelsea fans have been conditioned over a number of years for short-term thinking. Long-term thinking hasn't really been the model with Chelsea FC. And when you see managers go in and out of the club, but the trophies continue coming in, I think as a fan, or just your mindset is, well, the manager is almost a bit irrelevant here because the success keeps on coming. And actually, the way to get success is to sack your manager and keep on bringing a new one in. I don't think that's a good mindset. I've consistently said this on the channel. I think that mindset needs to change at Chelsea Football Club, because consistently we've been getting further and further away from the Premier League title. Whether Frank Lampard is the man to do that, I think we have to wait and see. But I think that the constant sort of shifting and changing and smashing the reset button anytime we see signs of fragility, I think is an issue. I think Chelsea, I just personally don't have the stomach for another reset button so soon. I want to see something given time. If it doesn't work out, sure, we think again. But I think that sort of the short-term 1 to 2 year thinking is a problem and problematic sort of within the culture of the club. And for Chelsea to change that, they have to back a manager consistently, even through some difficult periods. That's not going to change. if we have a difficult period at the start of the year and there are some signs of progress and it isn't a disaster, but we hit a reset button because there's fan frustration, I think we're going to be in the same place 2 years. And I don't think you can have a go at certain fans for having that mindset because they've almost been conditioned to think that way. I think it's going to take a lot of time and there's going to be friction there. And I think we have to give more patience to coaches at Chelsea if we want to see that sort of culture change, in my opinion. Dibiat asks, do you think Chelsea is conceding goals because of imbalance in midfield, or is it the downside of playing with high attacking tactics? This is what I was saying in an earlier question about pressing players very high and then them being exposed on transition. This is a big problem with Frank Lampard and with Derby as well. You can look back to the start of his coaching career there a couple of years ago and last season at Chelsea. I think it's a difficulty, yeah, and it's about balancing those sort of attacking instincts. I think I'd sound a bit like a hypocrite if I say that Lampard should turn into a reactive manager. I don't want to see that. I actually think at times, I've seen it so far this season where Chelsea we do neither. We don't sort of sit in a low block where we're really sort of contained, sort of regimented in our defending. We sort of do neither, as you saw on Saturday, where we're not really going at the throats of the opponent, but we're not really defending properly. We're getting overrun in midfield. It's sort of this middle balance, and it's really hard to watch. And I think Frank Lampard needs to decide what way he's going, because at times it's exhilarating football to watch, and I'd like to see that a bit more from Chelsea. And I think if Frank wants to be an attacking coach, which I think he clearly does, in terms of the way he sort of sways in terms of, say, a Jose Mourinho or, say, a Jurgen Klopp. I think he's definitely more on the Jurgen Klopp scale in terms of wanting to take the game to the opposition. I think at times Chelsea become so passive that it's really hard to sort of see where Chelsea are going. And I think, Frank, at times, I'd like to see us be a bit more progressive and go for the throats of opponents a bit more. That's about being more clinical when we get chances to kill the game off, which was a problem last year, which hopefully with the likes of, Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic, we'll see a lot more of that this season. But I do understand that problem of friction, and Frank clearly has an issue with setting up a defensive structure, a clear defined defensive structure. So it's easy for me to say just go at the opponent more, but if we don't have that defined structure, as we'll see, we'll be overrun over and over again. So I think it's something that Frank Lampard needs to fix, but I don't think just fixing sort of the imbalance in midfield means we have to become a pragmatic side. I think you can do sort of both. I think we can be sort of our best, the best defense is, attacking, and I'd like to see that a bit more, but I think it's a difficult question. And it's something Frank Lampard needs to answer, because it's been a consistent problem, hasn't it, throughout his time, not only at Chelsea, but at Derby too. And lastly, Manhandled TFC asking, this is sort of a trend of questions I've got obviously today in terms of defensively. Who do you think is at fault for the 3 goals? Lampard selection, the players themselves, or a mixture? I have to be fair. I think it is a mixture. I think you have to be fair with that. I think firstly, Lampard has to take the blame, because it's a sort of performance we've seen a lot under Lampard, where we start the game really well. We look really encouraging. I mean, playing some exhilarating football. It looks like we could run away with a game and win 4 or 5-0. I've seen that tons under Lampard at Chelsea. But then the game switches. Say we drop in form, our passing gets worse, or we concede a goal, like was the case on Saturday just before half time, and all our confidence seems to go, and our passing gets really erratic. It gets poor. We sit deeper and deeper, and not even, as I said before in a previous question, not even doing that well, just sort of doing nothing, in terms of our ability when we're under pressure and the momentum swings to play out from the back or evade a high press. We seemingly can't do that, and whether that's personnel on the pitch, having maybe Kova in there instead of Jorginho, I'm not entirely sure, but that's a big frustration for me. So I think just having a go at individual mistakes, which sure are there. There's certain individuals you can have a go at and say that those are the problems. Kai Havertz in the first half being too slow on the ball, that leads to Danny Ings' goal. Kurt Zouma and Kepa there. Mainly, I think Kurt Zouma, being sloppy on the ball there. And the third goal as well, I think, in terms of not tracking men at that final cross into the box. Of course, you've got to blame individuals there. But I think that there also needs to be criticism of Frank Lampard in terms of picking certain individuals who consistently make mistakes for Chelsea, who I don't think are the best personnel for that job. And I think there's been a lot of evidence over the past year for Lampard to look at and go, these individuals let me down over and over again. He keeps on picking them. There were options on Saturday, apart from the players he brought in, that could have helped Chelsea. I think instead of Kepa, you bring in Caballero. Instead of Andreas Christensen, you bring in Fikayo Tomori, who has a good relationship with Kurt Zouma, and you could sort of build that. I think there are options for Frank Lampard to choose from. So I think always going, it's an individual mistake, I think is a cop cop-out answer. There always needs to be that balance. I don't think you can 100% say it's the manager's fault, right? It's not Frank Lampard's fault that Kurt Zouma can't clear a ball when he does it 9 times out of 10. But I think also when you're bringing in a player like Kepa that clearly has a problem, a lack of trust from his fellow defenders and fellow players in the team, I think that's on Lampard too to understand that. So I think there is a balance absolutely to be struck there. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @HUDSON-ODOI. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.